Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is going to be Ken Smith on the pros and cons of raising minimum wage. Ken's speech project, The Media Speech from Public Relations Manual, calls for him and us to pretend he is in a television studio, which you are, in front of a television camera, talking to us at home in our living rooms. Therefore, he will not be making eye contact with us directly, but instead, he will appear to be looking at us through the camera. Since nearly all television editorials are scripted, Ken will be reading from a script, but will try not to appear to be doing so. Now for the introduction. Our guest speaker today is Ken Smith, Vice President of the Bay Area Chamber of Commerce. He will discuss with us a topic of current interest, pros and cons of raising the minimum wage. Ken Smith, pros and cons of raising the minimum wage.
Thank you, Carol Sue. Good morning, Bay Area. We all want people to have a better standard of living. The question is, what is the best way to achieve these desires? President Obama and Congress are currently taking on the issue of raising the federally mandated minimum wage. Is this the best way to achieve the goal we would all like to reach? Let's examine both the pluses and minuses of the issue. First, the official unemployment rate of those still actively looking for a job stands at 6.6%. Unfortunately, that figure does not take into account the millions of Americans who have dropped out of the workforce. The Labor Department's labor force participation rate, which measures the portion of working age adults who have either a job or are looking for one, fell to only 63.2% this last year, the lowest in 35 years. That leaves 92 million Americans out of work. It seems to me that growing the economy, putting more people to work, should be at least as high a priority as the wages received by those who have jobs. What effect then does raising the minimum wage have on the overall economy? Let's take a look at who benefits when the minimum wage is increased. First, only 4.7% of hourly wage workers and 1.1% of all workers are currently paid the minimum wage. These individuals, that is, the ones who don't end up losing their jobs because of the forced financial burden on employers, will see an initial financial benefit. Who are these people? Over half of all minimum wage workers are aged 18 to 24. These are mostly suburban youths, not the working poor. Furthermore, most poor Americans do not work at all, so cutting down the number of entry-level jobs by raising the minimum wage doesn't actually help the unemployed get jobs. Also, the average family income of a minimum wage worker is $53,000 a year. This is because few workers with minimum wage jobs are their family's primary income earners. In fact, 62% of minimum wage workers 25 and older live at 150% of the poverty levels. And 2/3 of minimum wage workers earn a raise within a year anyway. They don't tend to stay at that income level. Who else benefits? Many labor unions have contracts that relate one way or another to the minimum wage. That's why they jump on board anytime the subject of raising the minimum wage is on the table. Some contracts stipulate that wages automatically increase by some factor when the minimum wage goes up. In still other contracts, new negotiations are triggered automatically by the increase, regardless of where the current contract period ends. Democrat politicians who historically receive 91% of union campaign contributions will likely see their campaign war chests increase with donations from grateful union bosses. Even non-union workers benefit. If lower management is only paid a little more than their entry-level counterparts, what happens when the pay difference diminishes or disappears? Obviously, the employer has to raise their pay as well. Likewise, when lower management's wages increase, middle management is in that same position, and their pay also will have to increase. And then the same with upper management salaries when middle management wages are increased. Who else benefits? How about all levels of government? Increased income means more tax revenue for local, state, and federal coffers. What do all these wage increases mean? Higher prices and fewer workers. Many companies will be forced to let some employees go and require the remaining, already overburdened workers to pick up the slack. Overall, unemployment historically goes up after an increase in the minimum wage. Then, as the market adapts, higher prices will be passed on to consumers. Unfortunately, these higher prices tend to absorb the increases in the paycheck when leaving workers with little or no actual gain in their standard of living, and often with an actual decline in disposable income, both due to the higher cost of living and the pay increase triggers a higher income tax bracket. Trying to put a positive face on it, one study shows that reduction of employment opportunities due to minimum wage increases serve as an inducement for an incentive for low-skilled workers to go into debt and pay tuition for trade school training to get what otherwise would have been on-the-job training for which they would have been paid. My suggestion, instead of forcing higher wages on businesses, which ultimately reduces income opportunities for the community, let's reduce the financial burdens on the government places on them so that they can do what they do best, grow. When businesses grow, they hire more people. When they hire more people, competition between businesses create incentives for each business to offer higher wages and more perks to attract good workers.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken Smith.